Discover the 7 miraculous battles of the Bible, transforming faith from Genesis to Revelation. In the 3rd year of Jehoiakim, the word of the Lord came to Abraham while he dwelt in the land of Ur. The vast plains of ancient Canaan stretched before him, and although the promise of a land flowing with milk and honey filled his heart with hope, the shadows of war loomed ever closer. The great alliance of kings had set their sights upon the lands of Abraham's kin, and when news arrived that his beloved nephew Lot had fallen into the hands of invaders, a tempest of fear raged within him. The raiders, a coalition powerful and fearsome, had swept through Sodom and taken Lot captive amidst the chaos of battle. Abraham, a man known for his great faith yet still a vessel of human frailty, wrestled with the weight of his decision. He could not stand idle while his family was threatened. As night cloaked the land, he gathered his trained servants, their loyalty forged in shared struggles, knowing they would be few against many. Looking toward the distant horizon where the enemy camp lay, Abraham's thoughts spiraled. Will I succeed in this battle? Can I truly rely on God's promises against such odds? As doubts flickered like dying embers, he raised his hands to the heavens, anchoring his spirit in the covenant he had with the Almighty. You have promised that I shall be a great nation, he murmured, igniting a fierce determination within. The flames of bravery began to rise, fueled by the faith that had blossomed through years of walking with God. At dawn's first light, he surveyed his men, their faces a mixture of apprehension and resolve. We ride with the strength of the Lord, he proclaimed. Fear blended with courage as they prepared for a confrontation unlike any they had faced before. Their hearts beat as one, synchronizing with the very rhythm of creation. As they mounted their horses and galloped toward destiny, the sounds of the battlefield soon filled the air, clashing swords, the neigh of horses, and the cries of men. Abraham felt the pulse of war quicken against a backdrop of shadow and light. Yet within him, he recalled the might of God, who had parted the sea and delivered his people through trials. In that moment, victory was not defined by mere numbers but by obedience to the divine call. But as the skirmish grew fierce, doubts closed in like dusk stealing the light of day. Will my faith be enough? He pressed through clenched teeth, straining against the apparent futility. Then, as if answering his plea, a gust of wind swept across the field, stirring hearts and minds alike. He glimpsed a movement behind him, a presence not of this earth that gripped the spirit of all who fought. Was it a heavenly army, or merely a figment of his desperation? Just as the tide of battle appeared insurmountable, victory loomed, a tender whisper of divine assurance captured in the fleeting air. What does God have in store for his people when they dare to step forward in faith? The question hung over Abraham's heart like a promise yet to be fulfilled. Before we continue with this incredible biblical account, I want to make sure you don't miss any of these powerful scripture stories. Click the bell icon and select All Notifications. These biblical narratives have transformed countless lives throughout history. If God's word through this story is blessing you, please like and share with someone who needs to hear about God's faithfulness today. Tell me in the comments, which biblical story has most impacted your faith journey? I'm always amazed how God's word speaks to hearts across generations. Now let's continue with what the Lord did next. With the clang of swords echoing in his ears and the promise of divine intervention ahead, Abraham braced for what lay before him. Each step forward was not merely a march into battle but a walk into the very unknown of God's unfurling plan, binding heaven and earth through the treachery of war and the tapestry of faith. What would the outcome be as he pressed on, emboldened by the mystery of the Almighty? The sacred narrative had only just begun to reveal the tapestry of hope woven through their brave endeavor. As the battle unfolded, the clash of steel echoed high into the imperial vault, and the very earth trembled beneath the pounding of hooves. Abraham, a figure of resolute faith surrounded by the noise and frenzy, clung to the promises God had bestowed upon him. He had been called by the Most High to become the father of a great nation, and yet here he stood, on the very edge of existence, choosing to face the fury of war rather than flee from it. His heart burned with a desire to rescue Lot, the brother's son he loved dearly, yet doubt gnawed at the edges of his resolve. Abraham lifted his eyes to the heavens, where dark clouds swirled ominously, gathering as if they too were witnesses to this crucible of fate. "O Lord," he cried out, as the swell of battle surged around him, "May your hand guide my sword. Grant me the fortitude to overcome this great host for the sake of my family and for the covenant you have made with me." His voice rose above the fray, bolstering not only his spirit but those of his men, who felt their own fears vanquished by the power of their leader's faith. As they marched forward, led by their faithful patriarch, a whisper of wind brushed against their skin, offering a surge of inspiration, like the breath of God himself. Suddenly, amidst the chaos, the countenance of the enemy began to falter. Was it a perception of fear or the fear of God that spread among the raiders? The mere sight of a few dozen men rallying for righteousness, emboldened by prayer, ignited a flicker of hope deep within Abraham. "Now is the time," he bellowed, unwavering. "With the strength of the Almighty, let us be the instruments of His justice." With that decree, the tide of battle turned. Abraham, armed not simply with weapons, but with the unwavering conviction that God was with him, charged into the heart of the fierce contest. The skirmish morphed into a divine symphony, music of valor playing against the backdrop of peril. In the midst of this tumult, as swords clashed and shields buckled under the weight of conflict, Abraham found himself face to face with the leader of the coalition, the king of Elam. Glaring into the eyes of this adversary, Abraham felt a pulsation of divine energy flow through him. "Your grasp on my kin is finished," he declared, resonating with the voice of authority that only faith can manifest. Just then, a radiant light descended from above, illuminating the battlefield. The breath of divine presence filled the soldiers' hearts with courage. A myriad of forms, like a host of angels, seemingly clad in glory, surrounded Abraham, emboldening him further. On the edge of the clash, a pulse of undeniable victory surged through the air, murmuring of hope woven into their hearts by the Almighty, and there, in the thick of combat, Abraham's resolve culminated in a single act of divine intervention. He charged forward and struck the Elamite king, overcoming him as a testament of God's presence, but not without pain, a reminder of the cost of faith. As the last remnants of battle fell away, Lot was found and freed from his captors. The two embraced tightly, the tears of relief streaming down the cheeks of both men as they reunited under the shadow of divine provision. But as joy washed over Abraham, a heavy realization dawned upon him. In that moment of victory, a new understanding burgeoned, knowing that the battle he had fought was not merely for his family but for the unfolding of salvation history. Yet, what lies ahead? Abraham pondered, gazing upon the horizon aflame with the setting sun. From his lips was born a prophecy, "The Lord has led me through the darkness, and I know His ways are not our ways. What more shall He accomplish through this obedience?" As twilight enveloped the land, there remained an unsettling question: what greater battle was on the horizon, waiting for a faithful servant to rise? The promise of the Almighty echoed in the depths of Abraham's heart, a mystery to savor, compelling him further into the divine narrative that God was weaving through the threads of time and history. As Abraham and Lot stood amid the settling dust of the battlefield, the cries of victory reverberated in the air, mingling with the echoes of the past. Yet, an unyielding weight pressed upon Abraham's spirit, for he sensed that this triumph was the beginning of a far greater journey, one that would stretch beyond the bounds of his understanding. With his heart attuned to the divine whispers, he sought God's clarity in the solemn aftermath. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the valley, Abraham gathered his men, weary yet victoriously alive. "Brothers," he called out, his voice firm yet tender, "today we have struck a blow for our kin, empowered by the mighty hand of our God. But take heed, for the enemy may yet return, seeking to reclaim that which was lost." Lot, still shaken by the tumult he had witnessed, approached Abraham. "Uncle," he said, his voice steadying, "will there be peace now, or will the darkness rise again? Can we not dwell in safety, away from the tumult?" Abraham's gaze was unwavering. "The Lord has delivered us, but we must remain vigilant. Hark, beloved, the enemy waits in shadows, and greater trials may still come our way. Our faith must be as steadfast as the earth beneath our feet." As twilight deepened, a portent of the divine rolled over the horizon, gathering in the essence of the night sky. Abraham lifted his face, the cool wind mingling with the warmth of faith that ignited his spirit. It was then that the solemn voice of the Lord pierced through the silence. "Abraham," it echoed, ancient yet renewed, "you have fought well for your family, but the fight draws wider circles. There are lands yet unclaimed, peoples yet to be reached, and a promise that will stretch through generations." In that moment, the weight of prophecy unfurled in Abraham's heart. He could see more than the horizon. He caught a glimpse of a nation birthed from covenant and belief. He envisioned a lineage that would reach beyond the present moment, one that would bring forth not only his own descendants but those who would walk in the light of God's covenant, the very thread of humanity's redemption. "O Lord, I tremble at the vastness of your plan. What is my part in this grand tapestry?" Abraham cried earnestly, for beneath his faith resided a profound awe of the divine blueprint unfolding before him. "Fear not, for I shall guide you in all your ways. Your obedience shall not go unrewarded, and the land you tread shall be given to your descendants after you," the voice assured him. "They will be as numerous as the stars in the heavens, and through them, all nations shall be blessed." As the stars began to twinkle, one by one, Abraham felt an overwhelming sense of purpose envelop him. His heart quickened with anticipation but laced with the burden of reality. The path would be fraught with trials, for not all who walked with him would uphold the covenant, and so, as he turned to his brethren, he spoke with renewed vigor, "The Lord has revealed to me a truth that transcends our victories. We are called not only to defend but to advance, to seek the lands beyond, to stretch the tent pegs of our faith. Let each of us be warriors of God's promise, for the battles we face are never merely our own." As they gathered round, hearts ignited by Abraham's fervor, the resolve of their spirits coalesced into a single purpose. The night wrapped around them, creating a sacred space where fear and hope stood hand in hand, for each man saw the spark of divine ambition kindling a fire within. But even as faith surged, in a hidden corner of the land laid a secret, a powerful king plotting against Abraham and his own. And thus the earth trembled, not from the sound of battle, but from the whisperings of fate as God's sovereign plan unfurled further still, revealing a mystery that awaited its revelation in the days to come. What other shadows still loitered in the path ahead, yearning to thwart the promise of Abraham? As the dawn broke upon the horizon, the golden light spilled forth, illuminating the faces of those gathered at Abraham's side. With hope stirring in their hearts, they prepared to follow the path God had laid before them. But deep within, the sense of impending conflict lingered like an unsettling mist. "Rise, brethren," Abraham called, his voice steady yet filled with a weight of unspoken burdens. "Today we commence a journey not just through the land but through our very souls. For the Lord has bid us to go forward, and so we shall not falter." Lot, emboldened by the words of his uncle yet aware of the threats lingering in the valleys, stepped forward. "Abraham, how shall we navigate these uncharted lands? What guidance shall we seek when the shadows loom over us?" "Know that our guide is the Almighty," Abraham replied, a fervent fire igniting in his gaze. "He has not only bestowed upon us victory but directed our eyes to the promises yet to unfold. Let us gather our possessions, for we are to advance toward Canaan, the land of promise." And so, they journeyed, the caravan of men and families woven together in faith, venturing toward their divinely ordained destination. As day turned to dusk, murmurs of unease slipped through the ranks, the knowledge of unseen adversaries weighing heavily upon them. The land was beautiful, yet rife with challenges, and it wasn't long before Abraham's heart was gripped with concern. For he had not only to protect his own but to seek unity among the tribes that dwelled in the lands they passed through. Each city carried within it its own idols and worship, turning them against the God of Abraham. As they approached a fertile valley, the inhabitants emerged, cloaked in armor and hostility. Their leader, a man of stature and fierce reputation named Kedorlaomer, stepped forth, fury smoldering in his eyes. "Who dares trespass in my realm?" he thundered, his voice cutting through the evening air like a blade. Abraham, feeling the weight of God's promise pressing upon him, stepped forward without fear. "I am Abraham, servant of the Most High God. We seek the land promised to us, not as conquerors, but as humble wayfarers of His grace." Kedorlaomer laughed, a sound unkind, drowning the encounter in arrogance. "You speak of the Most High?" He may have empowered you at first, but can he shield you from my might? You have provoked not just a man, but a kingdom." With these words echoed through the valley, a silence fell among Abraham's men. The threat was clear, battle loomed on the horizon, and with it the fate of their mission. Yet within Abraham's heart burned a confidence rooted in the promises of God. "Fear not, my brothers," he called, raising his arms in a benediction unbroken by doubt. "Our God fights for us. Remember the victories he has given, for our strength lies not in our own might but in our reliance upon the one who called us." In that moment, the memories of the previous victory swept over them, igniting their hearts anew, even as Kedorlaomer's derisive laughter echoed in the air. Abraham turned his gaze heavenward, seeking divine wisdom. "Lord, what is your will in this confrontation? Grant us strength to stand against this tide, for we are not merely warriors, we are the bearers of your covenant." And as he prayed, a hush enveloped the valley, divine presence thickening the air around him. The promise resonated deep within him, revealing a deeper truth. For every battle would lead to revelation, and every victory would proclaim the faithfulness of God. "Lo, I shall turn the hearts of kings," came the whisper of the Lord, strong and yet gentle, "and through you, Abraham, I shall redeem nations." Thus, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of promise, Abraham understood, the battle awaited not only for survival, but for the very heart of the covenant itself. The night lingered on, and as they prepared for the coming conflict, each man stood resolute, knowing that God's sovereign plan would reveal itself yet again, drawing them closer into the mystery of his eternal purpose. One that even now, in the twilight of uncertainty, shone brightly with the light of hope. As the shadows deepened and the last rays of sunlight disappeared beyond the hills, Abraham's men gathered around their leader, their hearts pounding with uncertainty. Each one bore the weight of what lay ahead, grappling with fear and hope entwined like vines. And yet the presence of the Almighty lingered among them, a palpable reminder of his past faithfulness. "Brothers," Abraham spoke, his voice imbued with a solemn passion, "this night we stand not as mere mortals on a battleground, but as vessels of his divine purpose. The Lord of hosts goes before us, let us not forget who fights our battles." At that moment, Lot stepped closer, eyes wide with a mixture of reverence and yearning. "Uncle, in all our journeys, have we not witnessed his hand direct our steps? How shall we invoke his protection this time?" "By bowing our hearts in prayer," Abraham replied, lifting his hands in supplication. "Let us call upon the God of our ancestors, the one who parted the sea and brought forth the bread from heaven. We are his chosen, we shall not falter in the face of adversaries." With that, Abraham led them in a prayer of unity and strength, their voices blending like a sweet symphony of worship as they cried out for help. "O Lord, grant us courage as we face this mighty King. Protect the promise that you have given to us. May our trust be unwavering, even amid the storm." As they prayed, the air thickened with a divine influence, weighty and profound. The valley, once filled with hostility, felt suddenly transformed, as if heaven was bending low to hear their cries. Among the men, a spirit of resolve ignited, their fears momentarily eclipsed by the certainty of God's presence, yet outside their circle, in the heart of Kedorlaomer's camp, the atmosphere was laden with anticipation and dread. The king paced back and forth, clenching his fists, the scornful laughter from before now a distant echo. "These wanderers believe they can stand against me. But they know not the power I wield nor the might of my army." Suddenly, a shadow moved across the fire, a scout, returning from the fringes of the camp. "My lord, they are preparing for battle, but not as we expected. They pray as if invoking the heavens, their spirits unfaltering before us." Kedorlaomer, taken aback, narrowed his eyes. "Let them pray, let them call upon their God. It shall be their very cries that lead to their downfall. Bring forth our warriors, we shall crush their resolve by the strength of our arms." Meanwhile, back among Abraham's band, a sense of divine assurance swept over them like a fresh breeze. Isaac, Abraham's beloved son, looked up at his father, uncertainty flickering in his youthful eyes. "Father, shall we not take arms and fight with might? No, my son, Abraham replied, the weight of wisdom pressed upon him. Our might lies not in the sword but in our unwavering faith. For this battle is the Lord's, and he shall deliver us as he did before. As the night deepened, and the stars shone like diamonds overhead, Abraham felt a surge within him, a dawning revelation of what lay ahead, a glimmer of God's unfolding plan. He closed his eyes, sensing the future not yet unfurled. And then the voice of the Lord spoke, clear as the trumpet's call, "Tomorrow, Abraham, I shall demonstrate my power through you. For even the mightiest king shall bow before the purpose I have set forth in your lineage. Prepare your hearts for the victories to come." With that promise ringing in his soul, Abraham opened his eyes and turned to his men, now invigorated by the supernatural assurance. "Take heart, beloved, for our God shall show his glory. We will witness his hand move mightily among us, this day shall be marked by the echoes of his deliverance." Thus the dawn approached with divine expectancy, stirring their hearts for what was to come. With every moment, the threads of God's sovereign plan weaved tighter, binding the fate of nations to the faith of one man. And as the first light broke over the horizon, they prepared not just for a confrontation, but for a revelation, a testimony of his faithfulness that transcended battle and echoed through generations to come. For in the heart of Kedorlaomer's arrogance, the seeds of transformation were silently taking root, waiting to burst forth in miraculous clarity. What was God's greater purpose in this confrontation? Only the unfolding of time would reveal how far-reaching his plan would be. As the sun crested the horizon, casting golden rays across the landscape, Abraham gathered his men, emboldened by the promise that had been spoken to him. The air crackled with anticipation, a divine energy swelling within the hearts of those who had set their hopes upon the Lord. "Behold," Abraham said, his voice steady yet filled with reverence, "the day has come that our God will reveal his might. Let us prepare ourselves, not with shields and swords, but with the armor of faith and the praise of his glorious name. For our battle is not against flesh and blood, but against the forces of wickedness that oppress the land." The men nodded, their spirits ignited by the fervor of Abraham's words. Lot stepped forward, his face illuminated by the dawning light. "What shall we do, uncle? How shall we stand firm before the king and his countless warriors?" Abraham placed a hand on Lot's shoulder, his gaze unwavering. "We shall move as one, united in purpose and undivided in heart. We will call upon the Lord, lift our voices in praise, and as we march forward, let our faith be the banner that leads us." With a chorus of hymns rising through the air, they gathered their strength, pacing toward the battlefield, unwavering in their resolve. In that sacred moment, they became vessels of God's purpose, a living testament to his promise. Meanwhile, the men in Kedorlaomer's camp readied for battle, their hearts fueled by arrogance and the confident roar of their king. Kedorlaomer strode among them, an image of ruthless power. "These children of the desert seek to defy me," he thundered. "Let them pray, their cries shall be their undoing. Strike first and let their faith turn to fear." But in the sky above, the heavens stood still, watching intently as the stage was set for a divine conflict. Angels of the Lord, with swords drawn, prepared to intervene in the affairs of mankind as their cries ascended to the Almighty. The tension in the air was palpable, thick with the promise of action and revelation. As Abraham and his band reached the battlefield, the sight of Kedorlaomer's troops instilled a holy fear, yet their faith stood firm. Casting aside fear, Abraham raised his voice, proclaiming boldly, "Hear me, O people. We fight with the God of covenant and promise, the one who delivered our ancestors from Pharaoh's hand. Seek the Lord with me. For our victory is certain." The earth trembled as the armies squared off, the clash of swords and the battle cries echoing through the valley. Each braver man stood firm, aware that this was not merely a contest of warriors but a showdown of divine wills. Abraham, amidst the fray, felt the presence of God surround him, an unquenchable fire igniting the hearts of his brethren. In the chaos of battle, a roar erupted from Kedorlaomer's forces. The king, seeing the might of Abraham's men, could sense something was different. What madness is this? Who do they think protects them? They shall crumble beneath my heels. But then, as if commanded by the very voice of God, a sudden gale forced its way through the battlefield. The winds howled with divine purpose, disrupting the ranks of the enemy. Confusion struck Kedorlaomer's forces like a sickness, and panic began to replace their arrogance. Charge! Abraham commanded, sensing the shift in battle. For the Lord takes our side. As they surged forward, the ground beneath them shifted, faith became action. With each step they took, the power of God's promise grew, reverberating through the hearts of their enemies. For as they called upon the Lord, he answered with a mighty deliverance. Amidst the clamor, a sudden realization struck Kedorlaomer, his arrogant pretense fading in the face of undeniable truth. The God of Abraham was with them, and that was a force none could withstand, and thus, the day unfolded not merely as a battle for land, but as a profound revelation of God's sovereignty, marking the beginning of a new era in the history of nations. As the dust settled and the sun began its descent, the men gathered, still shaken from the day's events but invigorated by the evident power of their God. Little did they know that this day would echo through generations, a pivotal moment wherein faith manifested as victory. And as news of their triumph began to spread beyond borders, questions would arise that would stir the hearts of many. What new chapters of God's divine narrative awaited in the annals of history? What further revelations would unveil the breadth of his eternal plan? The unfolding of God's sovereign will was only beginning. As the evening shadows lengthened over the battlefield, Abraham and his men stood in awe of what had transpired. With the remnants of Kedorlaomer's forces scattered like chaff before the wind, the victory secured by the hand of the Almighty resounded deep within their hearts. A silence enveloped them as they gathered, their eyes reflecting both disbelief and profound gratitude. Among the tired yet triumphant warriors, Lot approached his uncle, his voice trembling with emotion. "What do we do now, uncle? The Lord has delivered us, yet what does this victory signify?" Abraham, raising his eyes toward heaven, answered, "This moment is not just for us, dear Lot. It is but a glimpse of God's power, a beacon of hope for all who call upon his name. We are chosen to declare his faithfulness and reveal to the nations the glory of our God." In that moment, a figure approached from the distance, cloaked in garments finer than the raiment of kings. It was Melchizedek, the king of Salem and priest of the Most High God. His presence emanated a reverence that enveloped the weary army. Upon reaching Abraham, Melchizedek blessed him, proclaiming, "Blessed be Abram by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth. And blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hand." With those words, he brought forth bread and wine, offering sustenance to Abraham and his followers amid their weariness. "Your victory is the Lord's doing, and he desires a covenant to be remembered," Melchizedek continued, as he served the bread and wine. A holy peace fell upon the assembly, and they understood they had crossed a threshold into a deeper fellowship with the Most High. Abraham, moved by the weight of the blessing, responded, "By this gift, I give you a tithe of all that I have gained. For truly, the Lord has fought for us today." With the lesson of generosity etched into their hearts, Abraham prayed aloud, thanking God for the divine intervention and asking for guidance in what was to come. "O Lord, let this victory not lead us to arrogance. Instead, teach us to walk humbly before you, trusting in your sovereign plan." In that sacred moment, the night air grew thick with expectancy. Suddenly, a messenger arrived, eyes wide with urgency and breathless with news. "Behold! The neighboring kings hear of your victory, and their hearts tremble. Their eyes shall be opened to the God of Abraham and his great might." Lot, filled with hope yet burdened, asked, "Shall we prepare for the response of these kings, uncle? We must be cautious, for power draws both interest and ire." "Indeed, my son," replied Abraham with gravity. "We must remain vigilant and faithful. For this battle is but the beginning, the Lord has greater plans that shall unfold in his time." As the stars twinkled against the vast sky, a sense of divine mystery clouded their thoughts. What did the Lord intend for his chosen people? What covenant would he establish in the hearts of nations? whispering his name across the winds of history, and so, as the shadows intermingled with faith and uncertainty, all present felt the stirring of a greater narrative unfolding. For surely, the God of Abraham was not done yet. There would come a time, they sensed, when his promise would burst forth into creation, revealing more of his sovereign plan, a plan that would extend to the ends of the earth and invite all to partake in his glory. As the glory of the victorious night lingered in the air, Abraham gathered his men and turned his thoughts toward the horizon, where the kings of the land would soon take notice of their strength. The flickering torches cast dancing shadows that seemed to echo the promise of God spoken long ago. Men of valor, he called, his voice steady yet filled with awe. Look upon what the Lord has done. He has delivered us from the hands of mighty foes, and now our witness shall go forth like the dawn. We are to proclaim his wonders to the world. The men murmured in agreement, hearts ignited with renewed faith. Then, they fell to their knees, giving thanks to God for the triumph bestowed upon them. Their prayers of gratitude ascended like a sweet aroma, filling the cool night air, yet, as the first light of dawn began to anoint the world, a sense of foreboding swept over them. Abraham, sensing the turbulent hearts of his men, sought the Lord once more. He wandered a short distance, alone, searching for words to convey his fears and hopes. The whispers of the past echoed in his ears, challenges faced, revelations promised. O Lord, he prayed fervently, what shall come of us now? Will these kings rise to oppose us? Or shall they see your hand at work and turn their hearts toward you? Deliver me from every doubt, for in your promises alone is my strength. And then, as if the heavens themselves answered, the wind picked up, carrying a voice as gentle yet powerful as the rushing waters. Abraham, I am with you. Fear not, for through you, the nations shall know my name. This victory paves the way for my covenant, a blessing to the descendants of your seed, a light unto the world. The assurance washed over Abraham, filling him with courage. He returned to his men, who looked upon him expectantly. Brothers, he declared, let us prepare, for I have received a word from the Lord. This victory is but the beginning and opening of the doors to nations beyond. We must be ready, for he will use us to reveal his glory on the earth. The men rallied behind him, their resolve strengthened. They began to strategize, their hearts poised beneath the anointed leadership of Abraham. Bit by bit, they understood that they were not merely warriors but instruments of the Almighty's design. As day fully broke, the sun illuminated the path ahead, and the distant figures of the kings began to emerge from the valleys, their faces lined with trepidation. The news of an unknown God who fought for his people reached them like a roaring tempest. Abraham, standing at the forefront, lifted his hands to the heavens and proclaimed, May the God of Abraham, of Isaac and Jacob be known among you. For he is the one who delivers from darkness. Come, let us speak of peace, for I have much to share. With these words, a divine tension settled upon the scene. Hope mingled with awe, as the hearts of those kings teetered on the edge of terror and curiosity. Would they turn away in fear, or would they draw near to the God who fought alongside his servant? As they met face to face, the air thickened with anticipation. What revelation awaited them, and what covenant would be forged in that moment? The pulse of destiny thrummed under the footfalls of history, and beneath it all, the sacred mystery lingered. What greater plan did the Lord have for Abraham and his people? A plan that would not only confront kings but also unveil the everlasting covenant meant for all nations. The answer lay shrouded in his divine purpose, waiting to be revealed in a time ordained by his sovereign hand. And so it came to pass that the kings approached, their retinues bristling with uncertainty, for they heard of the might displayed through Abraham and his men. The air was charged with anticipation, their hearts trembling as they came before the great patriarch, who stood firm in the assurance of his God. The first among the kings, a man of stature and renown, stepped forward, his voice trembling but resolute. Abraham, we have heard the wonders of your victory. Tell us, what power is it that grants you such strength to triumph over those who would seek your destruction? With humility, Abraham answered, It is not by my might, nor by my sword that I stand victorious, but by the hand of the Almighty God who has called me. He is the God of all creation, the one who divided the seas and called forth the stars by name. It is his covenant that lifts us up and sustains us. The kings exchanged glances among themselves. They felt a stirring in their spirits, an awakening to the possibility of this foreign god. Then another king, cloaked in gold and adorned with jewels, spoke, "If your God is truly with you, then let us lay down our arms and seek this peace you speak of. We have fought many battles and lost much in our every endeavor. What hope can you offer that is greater than the swords we wield?" Abraham, sensing the longing for peace in their voices, raised his hands once more and implored, "Listen, I bring to you the message of the God who governs the heavens. He desires not only victory for us but shalom, wholeness, peace. He calls us to turn from our ways that lead to strife and embrace the path of righteousness." As Abraham spoke, the men around him felt a surge of inspiration, for they knew their chance had come to witness the glory of God manifest among the nations. The kings stood still, their hardened hearts softened by the solemnity of the moment. They listened intently as Abraham continued to unfold the mysteries of Yahweh and the covenant made with his forefathers. But among them was a king whose heart was filled with bitterness and doubt. He stepped forward, a sneer upon his lips. "You speak of peace, yet I see only weakness in your words. Do you think that your God can withstand the fury of all our armies? This victory, I deem it fleeting, and you, like all men, shall fall." Abraham's countenance darkened momentarily, but he did not relent. "Behold, the truth of the Lord stands firm as the mountains, and the wrath of man shall wither before his majesty. You may oppose his will, but I warn you his plans shall not be thwarted. Your doubt shall only lead to your fall." These words echoed like thunder among the ranks of the kings, casting a heavy stillness over the assembly. Then, suddenly, the sky began to change. Clouds gathered swiftly above, casting shadows upon the land where the men stood, as if the heavens themselves stirred in response to the challenge posed. A deep rumble of thunder rolled forth, and the ground trembled slightly beneath their feet. The kings turned pale, the power of the Almighty overshadowing their doubts. In that moment, as the very atmosphere pulsed with divine presence, Abraham knew that fear and faith would intertwine eternally. He felt the weight of a greater promise upon him, a sense that they stood upon the precipice of something monumental, the unfolding of a covenant that would change the course of histories yet to come. Thus, the ink was prepared, and the scrolls awaited, for the pen of destiny was poised to write. What covenant would emerge from this profound encounter? As each king stood in the silence of reverence and uncertainty, the divine mystery thickened, hinting at God's grander purpose, waiting in the wings to unfurl. The culmination of his plan beckoned. What would it reveal for Abraham and his lineage, and for nations yet undiscovered? The answer lingered in holy anticipation. As the clouds rolled overhead and the tremors of divine presence surged through the assembly, Abraham felt stricken with the weight of his calling. The air crackled with expectancy, and silence enveloped the kings as they stood frozen, compelled to contend with the presence of the God who claimed the heavens and the earth. Each heart beat like a drum, a primal rhythm of survival and hope, interwoven with the threads of faith that stitched the very fabric of creation together. "Brothers and kings," Abraham began, his voice steady as the surrounding chaos grew still, "you have come seeking answers and a path forward. In the God of the covenant lies a promise transcending kingdoms and empires. He is the Alpha and Omega, whose purposes bend not to our wills, but to the eternal design he has set in motion. Today, I stand as his servant, not as a warrior brandishing sword, but as a herald of his goodness." The once fierce countenance of the king who had scorned Abraham softened, a flicker of curiosity igniting in his heart. "What then do you propose?" he asked, his words lined with the weight of uncertainty. "Are we to turn our swords to plowshares? Can peace truly reign where power once ruled?" Abraham raised his hand, a profound authority enveloping him as he spoke the eternal truth that had guided him through tumult and trial. It is his hand that offers peace, not in the absence of conflict, but in the midst of it. The God I serve does not promise freedom from struggle, but the assurance that through every challenge, his guidance remains. He invites us all into a covenant of grace, a shared journey where his light breaks through the darkest of valleys. We can be instruments of his peace. The murmurs of the kings filled the air like leaves rustling in a gentle breeze, the wind carrying their doubts to distant shores. Indeed, a breath of divine inspiration swelled among them, questions like seeds were planted, sprouting thoughts of mercy and redemption. However, the biting king cautioned, "You must understand that loyalty has a price. What will your God give us in return for our allegiance?" Abraham's gaze intensified, eyes aflame with faith. His offer is not merely for allegiance but for partnership in the unfolding of his kingdom. He shall bless those who embrace righteousness, and through this covenant, he will bless all nations, as you align yourselves with his purpose. As he spoke, a heavenly hush fell upon the gathering once more, like a warm hand cradling fragile hearts. The winds shifted, carrying with them an unseen army, angels encamped around the faithful, brushing wings over men who had never known the God of Abraham in such an intimate way. "I declare," Abraham continued, "that the God I serve desires your hearts, not your fear. To walk in faith with him will lead not only to individual blessing but to a transformation of this land, a legacy that lives beyond the grave, one that shall ripple through time to the generations yet unborn. Will you not join me in this journey?" At the core of their beings, the kings felt the seed of faith buried deep within them begin to stir. Could they truly trust? Could they step away from power and towards providence? A silent understanding settled as they looked at one another. A covenant could indeed be forged not just of land, but of hearts united in pursuit of something greater. Then, as the sun dipped low, casting a golden hue over the land, the chief king stepped forward, voice quaking as he replied, "We shall heed your call, Abraham. For your God is present among us, and in his presence, we glimpse a new dawn. Let us lay down our arms and seek the healing that his covenant promises." And as the echo of agreement reverberated among them, a wave of divine peace washed over the valley. Abraham felt it, the unmistakable touch of God's favor, igniting hope in the hearts of those gathered. He lifted his hands in true worship as the foundations of empires shifted, acknowledging the birth of a new alliance destined to spread justice and mercy, fruit born from his sovereign plan. As twilight enveloped the land, the covenant was sealed not merely with words but through the breakthroughs forged in faith. In that sacred hour, Abraham stood surrounded by kings once at enmity, but who now became united as one through the bond of the Almighty's promise. The rustle of faith became the armor they wore, stronger than any steel, securing their destinies as nations arose with the breath of renewal. Thus, the world witnessed the miraculous birth of unity inspired by the God of Israel, a transformation deftly woven into the tapestry of history, bearing witness to every soul yearning for redemption. Abraham, firm in his resolve to follow the path laid out by the Almighty, sensed that the shadows of antiquity brought forth a light so bright the fabric of creation itself rejoiced. And so it was that the name of the Lord reverberated through the ages, a legacy inscribed not only upon stone tablets but in the very hearts of men willing to embrace his covenant. Abraham, the father of many nations, beheld the dawn of a new era, the beginning of a story that would not only endure beyond the sands of time but would unveil the glory of God to all humanity. This was the heritage of faith, a legacy birthed in battles won by the power of love, shaping the world anew under the wings of the Most High. Dear friends, the story does not end here. It continues through you. Subscribe immediately to our channel to stay connected to these powerful biblical stories that will transform your faith. Leave a like now to help spread God's word through the algorithm, ensuring that more souls can experience his truth and grace. Comment below with your spiritual reflections and how this biblical account has impacted your journey of faith. And don't wait another second, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to hear God's sacred promise today. Together, let us proclaim his glory and change lives through the truth of his unending love.